Okay, hello, Candace Pinn. How are you? Um,
Oh, nice to see you again.
you too, you too. A year ago, we had pretty much the same conversation. You are the president of the Westchester Alliance for Black School Educators. You were a 30-year teacher in the Rochelle School District. We talked about a year ago Amistad legislation. Can you tell us where it's been in that year and where it is right now?
Sure. So last year, we were super hopeful that our amendments to the Amistad legislation were going to be voted on in both houses, both in the Assembly, New York State Assembly, and in the New York State Senate, and brought to the floor for a vote. However, last year, there were not enough supporters, votes in both houses to bring it to the floor. And in that time, what we've done is expanded our coalition, raised more voices. Our legislator champion, Assembly Member Stephanie Zinnerman, sort of talked to colleagues, talked to state ed behind doors, and garnered more support. She got Comrie to sign on again. They updated their bills. And again, we just learned that in the Senate, there weren't enough votes to bring it to the floor. And so our assembly member, Benedetto, and these are education chairs, heard that the Senate was not going to pass it. And so he chose not to even bring it to his committee. And this is news that we learned just recently, even though we'd had a really hopeful meeting in April with the sponsors of the bill. The Black, Latino, Hispanic, Asian caucus is behind the bill. And, it was a surprise. And the pushback, we were told by Representative Benedetto, is that NYSED and the Department of State, they believe that the municipalities, that is the districts, have everything they need to create inclusive curriculum. But we know that that's not true. Not only do they not have the research resources, not only do they not have the resources to continually educate, professional development. Not only do they not have the resources to look at its efficacy, they also don't have the strength of the state behind them, because a lot of our districts all over the state have pushback. And there is definitely a war on the truth. And so it makes it very difficult for our district leaders to change their policy. And so we need the state to come in and say, yeah, no, this has to be done. And so we are moving on. We are going to continue to write and push for the legislation, but also we are looking to perhaps going to the media, having maybe a trip on legislative day. We're also looking for a meeting, a sit down with both the education chairs of both houses and Commissioner Rosa and Chancellor Young. And so we continue.
Okay, and so just to get in the weeds a little bit, in case this is coming out of left field for people watching, if this legislation is passed, what actually goes into progress? What happens? What process starts to happen?
Right. So we talked about last year that this legislation, named after the Amistad ship, right, passed back in 2004 in New Jersey, and then a companion legislation passed in New York, but it was not funded, right? So it calls for, the existing legislation calls for a commission to study what is being taught in the schools about slavery and its legacy and the contributions of African Americans. And that commission is supposed to recommend to state ed, New York State ed, what needs to be added. Well, this legislation actually calls for funding of an Amistad department that would do some of the administrativa, which would be, professional development, which would be efficacy, measurement, which would work with state ed on standards and testing. But it also calls for a commission of experts, 16 public members who are experts in the field, and some legislators and leaders to curate this curriculum from pre-K through the second year of public college, right? And what they would do is that they would use existing curriculum that is out there and fit it to New York State. So, for instance, in New York City, they're piloting a Black history curriculum right now. There is a curriculum that is being used in Buffalo. It's actually units from New Jersey. There's a curriculum that's created in Rochester. There's curriculum out there for just middle school. There's curriculum for AP courses. So all of these resources are at the ready and available to this commission once it's created. And all they would have to do is figure out what children should know at the end of each grade level and create what we call a scope and sequence that would then serve to provide a roadmap for what activities are done at each grade level. And then once that is done, the department would be there to support school districts who have to include this curriculum. They would also be there to help school districts evaluate their own curricula. And they would be there to provide summer training, CTLE credits, extra funding for incentivizing districts. So we really do need, and this is not something that the state ed can do without, within their department. We need a separate inclusive education department because it's a big job and it's ongoing. It's not a one-shot deal, right? So.
Mm-hmm. That's really clear, and I appreciate you explaining that. I find that our teachers, so many of them want to teach a deeper history of this country, especially Black history, and they don't know how to. And I think this would really support them. We always think of it from the student perspective, but I really believe that the teachers would breathe a sigh of relief if they had this kind of support. And so I'm all for it. Now, if we want people who believe that, and I also want to say too that like we're so divided right now, whether you're on the left, right, or middle, you can admit that. And we're having a lot of deep issues come to the surface. And so I think going further into the foundation of who we are, which is studying Black history, we're going to breed a generation of children who might not fall into these traps because they're thinking in a different way. That's what I'm hoping for. So, so what can we ask the public to do?
So we would love for the public to raise their voices to their representatives and let them know how important inclusive history is for the well-being of their children, for their not only their personal growth, but also so that they can be informed citizens of the world, right? So, I mean, inclusive history is not a negative. It doesn't take away. It is only an add-on, and an add-on in a way that, like you said, transforms how we really think about who we are and where we want to be and where we want to go. So raising their voices to their representatives. There are two bills, Assembly Bill 1939 and Senate Bill 5334. And letting their representatives know in both Senate and Assembly that they really support them, that they really want to see this kind of transformative education that has been in place in New Jersey for 21 years, right? And then also joining our coalition as we communicate with education leaders and legislators, have meetings, share information. So they can go to the WABSE website, www.wabseny.com, and join our coalition. And if you represent an organization, make sure your organization joins our coalition so that we can further our advocacy.
Beautiful. Okay, so when we send our newsletter out to our audience of 5,000, I'm going to put all this in there so people know how to find you and not to get lost in it. And I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for your support.
It's so needed, especially for me and the learning that I had to do in my 40s to become a better American. So
All of us.
thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks.